Hello, everyone, and welcome to the JT Jorfi podcast. Today, my guests are my good friends Cage Boons and Otuoze Baiye. I met them actually both kind of happenstance, serendipitously when I moved to Newark at first. Otuoze I met at the taco night at our building complex social event, which was pretty cool. And then Cage I met first on the platform waiting for the train to go into Manhattan. So I've always appreciated the fact that we met totally randomly in real life and have had a great connection ever since and introduced them to each other, and we're all hanging out living in the same city. So yeah, really appreciate you guys taking the time and coming on. Maybe if you all, or if you both could give a little bit of intro, a little background on yourself, maybe where you're from and what you're up to now. Cage, if you want to go first.
Sure. First and foremost, thank you so much for the invitation to join your pod. I know this is a very important space for you, so really pleased to be here to share some thoughts and feelings on the topic. So my name's Cage Boons. I'm from Liberia, West Africa. Grew up in the UK. As of now, I'm a corporate banker. I work for Lloyds Banking Group. So pleasure to be here, man. Looking forward to diving into the topic.
Sounds good. Thanks, guys. Otozi.
Good morning, gentlemen. For my story, I'm from America by way of Nigeria. Was born there, came to America, lived in different states growing up. I joined the Army when I was 18, and I did that for 7 years, including three as a missile systems officer. And then I got out of the Army 2.5 years ago, and for the last 14 months, I've been a bank regulator. So that's a little intro for me.
Nice. Yeah, our conversation, I wanted you both on the podcast as we were hanging out the other week and talking about work-life balance, kind of our goals moving forward. Myself, I have a baby on the way, so my wife and I are preparing for what that life is going to look like. So with that, considering a lot of how I prioritize and kind of arrange my life, career being a central focus of my life for most of my adult existence. Career was kind of always number one, but now with family coming front and center, it was nice to talk to you both the other week about these things. So maybe to kind of open up that as our first topic here. So maybe Cage, from your side, has career kind of been front and center in your life, or how have you thought about priorities, balancing things like family and career, and what's been your experience thus far?
Sure. Really, really interesting topic. And one when I'm sort of in my free time, I like to read about. So I think being on the back end of my 20s, to be honest, my career has been front and center. Growing up with not much, having a good career felt as a means of escape um, in terms of economic um, abilities and sort of escaping some of the working class, what we say in England, working class circumstances that a lot of people grow up in. So definitely going to university, going to graduate school, the aim was to put myself in a better position. And I sort of went through the classic route of internship, and then joined a business straight out of university. The emphasis to date has definitely been on networking, building skill sets, and quote unquote working hard. So if I look back and I reflect, I haven't had as much quote unquote fun as some of my peers, because I've said to myself, if I'm able to operate with a level of intensity, um, especially hitting the ground hard in terms of my career, it's going to put me in a position when family comes up to sort of hopefully take my foot off the gas pedal a little bit. And that's part of the reason I came to New York. As you can tell, I have a strange accent from colonizers. So I came here because New York is the sort of epicenter of the finance world, and coming to this space, I'd hope to further accelerate my career. Um, but I think in this process, in this journey, I've realized that there are things more than job, career, and having a bit of an existential crisis. I've definitely started to pivot, but we can get into that later. But all in all, career has been the main focus in my 8 years of in my 20s.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. And just quick on a side, Cage, maybe speak up a little bit more. I don't know if like
Oh,
it's because the microphone is far away from your face, or if you have a mic built into your headset or something, you could switch that over to, but it's just a little bit hard to hear you.
I might just
Um,
take off the headphones completely, to be honest.
um, I'm gonna edit. Okay, so then give me a note so I can go back and take out what I'm just telling you. Okay. Um, cool. Thank you for sharing that, Cage. Otozi, how about you?
So that question about the focus on the career, and probably all the questions you're going to ask, I'll have to split it into two parts of my life because I'm 28, right? But I spent 7 years in the army, and I've only been a civilian 2.5 years. I've only had a civilian job for 14 months. So in the army, there's no such thing as work-life balance. 24-hour shifts are a thing, right? Deployments, which I never did a combat deployment, but still deployments, training, spending a lot of time in the woods, shooting around with guns and stuff, looking at each other. Um, and it definitely takes a toll, right? I mean, I had a serious relationship when I was in the army, and that was always something that came up, right? You have to go do this thing. And I'm going, yeah, I literally cannot say no, right? I had my autonomy was very limited when I was in the army. And so when I came out, actually, the statistic, right? Uh, 2020, I spent 9 months out of the year doing field training, 9 actual months. And I was only sleeping in my own home for 3 of those months because I counted.
Hmm. So you're like on
Uh,
location for 9 months, like
exactly. Not sleeping in my own bed, just doing army stuff.
yeah.
So when I got out of the army, I did not want to be doing that anymore. I I didn't want my job to consume me. So, we could get into the details of how I found this career, but basically, I became a bank regulator because I just learned that it was a job where I could work 4 days a week, right? 40 hours, 4 days a week. And there would never be an expectation that I do anything more than that, right? Work very hard, regulating, some of the most productive financial services firms in the world. But I'm doing that at exactly 40 hours a week, right? So that's been a huge thing for me now, right, in my civilian life. Um, and so I work, Monday through Thursday. Friday is for me to do whatever I want, right? It's for me to hang out with friends like you guys. I haven't had any serious relationships since I got out of the army, but presumably at some point if that happens, right, that's gonna be, hey, I'm gonna hang out with my girlfriend, right? But I leave Fridays to myself. That's a thing that I'm really huge on. I definitely care about my career, right? And I work very hard and I have career goals that I want to accomplish. But I I must just accomplish this in 40 hours, right? And then leave the rest of the hours in a week to myself.
Hmm. Yeah, it sounds a lot like the maybe one of the keys to success here is creating boundaries up front. So you kind of noticed with the army that those boundaries didn't necessarily exist, or you didn't have the ability to create them at all, and it seemed like totally all-encompassing, overwhelming. Like your time was not really your time. So when you had the opportunity to go and seek out a new career, you were able to maybe put up that boundary and say, I want to work at a job that I can work very hard, but it's going to be within these time frames of the 40 hours a week, and overtime is not required, and so I can still have my own life and activities that I focus on outside of that. Would you say that, I guess, was that receptive? Like when you're going through the interview process, was that something that was explicitly talked about, or is it just more like that was just the type of job that it was?
Yeah, that's just the life of a bank regulator. And that's why I was saying, I there's an element of luck to it, right? Because I already had this mentality of, yes, I wanna have a career that's, I guess, high impact, right? Being a veteran, I want to be doing something that's just, well, that's really cool. Um, but I also, knowing my experiences from the army, where my boss would call me at 2 in the morning, right? You have to take care of this thing. Come to the office in 3 hours, and I have to do it. Just going. This is not a lifestyle that I ever want for myself. So when I was when I got out of the army, and then I went to get my master's in cybersecurity, and I was researching career options, right? And then I happened to come across the regulatory route, and I was reading all the benefits of just there's a lot of reading and writing involved in my work, and there are times when I have to travel and stuff. But when I'm when I'm on site, or when I'm not in travel status, right, I get to work remotely as much as possible. I only ever do 40 hours when I'm not in travel status, right? And it's just these were things that I had learned about the job, right? The job description. They were telling me this is what your life is going to be. And I was going, you know what? That overall, that's pretty cool. I think I'm going to take that. And so, it's allowed me talking about, I guess, the ability to have my own free time. Last year I did a bunch of fitness challenges. I went to concerts, and I got more tattoos. I got a bunch, a lot of tattoos. I got more tattoos. I got, if I just wanted to do something on a Friday, right? Yeah, I'm gonna go do it. I'm gonna get some friends together, and we're gonna go to the beach, right? We went to the beach last year, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
All of us, Juneteenth, right? So all those things are that lifestyle that I was very intentional about wanting for myself, and it just so happened that I found out it already existed as a regulator. So I was, it
Nice.
worked out for me that way.
Yeah, that sounds like a kind of nice strategic
J
approach to
JT,
the
I had a
approach.
question for you actually.
Sure.
Me and Otuoze both have an insider's perspective on your really interesting and colorful work experience. So how has this oscillated for you in terms of the emphasis on career versus the emphasis on family? Really keen to understand how you've been navigating that.
Yeah, yeah. I think pretty much for since college straight through till the past couple of years, when I got married and started trying to plan toward the future. Before that, career was kind of the only thing I really cared about. I think that maybe it was my upbringing, my education, societal expectations, culture, things like that, just influences around me, made me think that my self worth was tied to my net worth. And if I was able to make a lot of money, then I would be a good person, viewed as a successful person. And like those are the ideals and goals that I should strive for. I never went too far in that direction where like I only focused on the money. Like I did, I quit a job that I was getting paid very well because I wanted to change my environment. I wanted to move down to Florida and work on some interesting things with my friends. But even when I did take that pay cut, it was with the expectation or the hope or the goal of being able to then increase my earning potential that much more. It always has been kind of in the back of my mind as this thing that I need to be striving for. Like almost like it's not a choice. Like you have to play in the game and you have to try to win the game. And the game is accumulating wealth and gaining maybe power or influence. And now that my wife Brittany and I are planning for having a child, like my perspective is changing in front of my own face. It's like the witness of of my personality, and like as I as I move towards this event happening, I'm realizing that okay, yeah, wealth is it's helpful. It provides freedom. Financial independence is still a goal of mine, but I'm not as consumed by it anymore because I know that spending time with family and really being there for them to support and love and provide are really the necessities, and the job to provide the money for that is kind of like the means to accomplishing that. So that's the framework I'm trying to keep in mind as I move forward, that the money is necessary and it's definitely there to make my life more comfortable, but it doesn't have to be like an obsession. I think that's what I'm trying to move away from, is to kind of remove some of the anxiety around it, and just focus on my family as being kind of the more front and center for my attention day to day.
Yeah. I'm so sorry. I have another question for both of you, especially being Americans. Why do you think American culture really propagates this idea of, I think more so than other places I've been to, that career is the most important thing. Your financial status is sort of triumphs everything else in a person's life, and how well you do is an important part of your self-worth. Would love to hear from you guys because I think it's more intense in the US.
That's what's eco first.
It's because America's a business. We're all for sale. I mean, that's just what it is, right? Dating, going all the way back to the our Puritan founding, right? The Puritans were all about hard work and always asking for forgiveness for your sins, right? So that's all they did. They went to church and they worked. So I mean, that gets passed down, right? America, it's I have this conversation because I have a lot of international friends, right? And a lot of times we come to the same conclusion that the same reason that draws people into America in the first place, that it's so easy to open a business and run a business, and that there are so many opportunities. That's the same reason that makes people, once you actually get here, you go, oh my God, this is making me exhausted all the time because everything is always a business. It just never turns on. Off, I mean, off, right? That's how it is, right? Everything is commercialized and marketed, and you have to be as well, right? I can't just go meet people at night and say, "Hey, I'm Otuoze and I'm just a random guy." It's no, I'm a regulator, and I do this and I do that. But I also like to play drums on the side, or I also take care of my dogs, right? I have to tell people what it is I'm doing with my life before I get into the things I actually enjoy. I mean, I enjoy my work, right? It's not that I don't enjoy my work, but it's just that's how it is in this country. But when I go to other countries, right, I could talk to somebody for an entire day and not know what it is that they do for work, right? And the same thing with me. I would never bring it up, but it's just we have to be that way in America because this country's a business.
Yeah, I think
Wow.
bringing up the historical context is what I was going after as well. I mean, the country's not all that old as far as the United States of America and the government and the Revolutionary War. 1776. Compared to other countries, we are like a baby, like still in the crib probably as far as just comparing the length of time that this country has been around as an entity versus others that have these long, sometimes ancient histories that inform their current populations and what people should strive to do. I think because this country's so young and maybe the country as like a consciousness feels like it needs to prove itself and make big things. And also, I mean, we have a pretty amazing track record of folks that in this country have like invented things that have changed the world, created businesses that have become the biggest businesses the world's ever seen. And I think the stories and kind of like the fanfare and the fame and fortune that goes along with those people and their legacies kind of gets put on a pedestal as, well, these people did this, they did it in America, we want more of that. And so everyone just kind of buys into this collective, Team USA is the team that's always trying to win the gold medal of economics or financial accomplishment. So like, get on board or go move somewhere else. Like, I don't know. It seems like that's just kind of the ethos of the country is like, let's try to get after it as hard as we can, the hustle culture. And it gets celebrated in movies and the media, TV and all that. And if you choose to not prioritize that, then people tend to not be really as interested, it seems. So yeah, I
Mm,
guess that's how I would view it. What do you
thank you
think, Gage?
both. Yeah, thank you both. And yeah, I think you both are spot on. The American work ethic and some of the modern day benefits of the economic strength this country possesses is idealized. But what I think I've realized is some of the not so good elements of American society are ignored in terms of, again, people being on the brink of exhaustion, constantly. I think people's economic instability being another thing that's keeping them in constant worry. The psychiatric sort of epidemic that exists in the US as well, in terms of people just being unwell, right? And it sort of links to JT, your passion, and Otuoze, I know you've been really on your health kick as well in terms of, hey, how can we live more holistically whole lives? And I think that's the journey I've been on recently in terms of, hey, how can I live a life that is meaningful, that is covers, all of these other areas outside of economic prosperity, right? Because even in the UK, we're fed the same rubbish of, hey, once you're successful, everything will be okay. And I think personally, without getting too deep, I started reaching a level of success, but there were still other areas that were missing. And I've always tried to be a quite self-conscious person. I felt those things were missing, so I was like, clearly this is not it.
Yeah, I think that's a nice kind of segue to pivot into more of like the health and fitness. So Twazi, you mentioned that you had a bunch of fitness challenges over the past year. Maybe talk about what was your inspiration for those, and maybe some examples of the things you were trying to accomplish and how it went.
Yeah, so in 2024, I did a different fitness challenge every month. And
Beast.
yeah, it really just started with so January 1st, right? There's this guy I know who graduated from West Point a few years before me. Really cool guy, was a wrestler, and then he went and he did infantry in the army, so just putting his body on the line all the time and stuff. And then he did this challenge where he ran 300 miles whoa, in a month. Yeah. And then and then I was going, dude, I want to be hardcore too, man. I want to do it. And he's going, just do some sort of challenge your body. Start with something like push-ups every day. So it was January 1st, right? So I go, all right. I think I mean I've always been really fit. That's my thing. Even as a kid, I wrestled a little bit. Combat sports before the army, and then I was in the army and stuff. So I just said, okay, you know what? I'm gonna do 50 push-ups, or no, 100. It wasn't 50; it was 100. I'm gonna do 100 push-ups and sit-ups every day for the next 30 days. I'm gonna do that. And then the next thing was indoor exercise bike. I'm just gonna do that. And then March, a friend came up, or at the end of February, a friend came up and said, "Hey, let's run the Brooklyn Half Marathon together." So I go, "All right, let me start training for that." So then I was running in the spring, right? And then after that, it got too hot, so I was doing jump rope. But yeah, it was I. So it started off in January because my friend he had posted about this fitness challenge, 300 miles in a month, and I'm going, well, I want to do something like that, but I can't do that. I'm not at that level. And then I was just kind of doing it as I went. I at some point I said, hey, you know what? I completed 100 push-ups and sit-ups every day in January. Let me do something in February. And then I was going, okay, I'm going to do a challenge every month in 2024. Then it was the half marathon came up. Then it was too hot, so I was doing jump rope every day because I couldn't run. Right, it would be 7 a.m. and it's 90 degrees last summer, so I couldn't run. So I could stay in a spot outside that's shady, and I could jump rope, and that's not too bad. So I did that for 2-3 months. Then I started getting into exercise biking at the end of the year. I mean, into outdoor biking because I was indoor biking before, so I was doing outdoor biking, and then my final challenge of the year, December 1st, I biked 26.2 miles around Manhattan. And I was actually trying to do the full outside perimeter of Manhattan. It's 32 miles. But that day, it was December 1st. It was about 20 degrees out, wind blowing, I don't know, maybe 18 miles an hour.
Yeah, not a great day
I
for
was
a bike ride.
Yeah, I know. I think about it now. I go, that was completely insane. But I was just so focused on accomplishing that goal because I was going, all right, December 1st, I want to bike the perimeter of Manhattan. Right? And then I tried. I couldn't finish. I couldn't end up doing it because it was too cold, right? I got to 26.2, right? I looked at my watch and I go, I'm going to freeze to death. I need to stop. And then I stopped and I went home. But I would have done it. If it worked for that, I would have done it. But the mentality that mentality, I always had that just personally, even before the army. But since I've gotten out of the army and talking about that work life balance, physical fitness is part of that for me. Right when I would go through those fitness challenges, right when I was preparing myself, you know, I'd wake up at 5 in the morning and then I'd run 10 miles and then I go, okay, I feel really good. And then I'd look at my work for the day. When I have some meeting with some guy and I need to fill out some paper, that's nothing. I ran 10 miles this morning. I got this, right?
Get the
So
hard stuff over with
yeah,
early. Everything's easier
exactly. So
after.
that's one way it helped me, and then just giving myself something to brag about outside of work, because that's something that I've always just wanted to have, right? You know, I have a good career that's nice for me, but I don't want that to be the only thing I'm known for, right? When I'm talking to people, I want to go, oh yeah, I ran the Brooklyn Half Marathon last year, and then I also biked 26.2 miles. People, whoa, this guy's crazy.
Nice.
Yeah, I mean, I like that, right? I like that I could be known for other things, right? And you know, besides that, I got two dogs, right? I take them to places, right? This year, I'm gonna get a drum set, so you know, these are the things that I want to be talking about outside of work, and you know, I was very intentional about that last year. Just okay, this fitness challenge that I'm doing. Yes, it's to keep me in excellent shape, but it's also a way for me to create a unique identity for myself outside of the workplace. That's what it was too.
Yeah.
It's part of it.
Yeah, nice kind of balance out so that not too much focus or too much pressure is on your kind of identity related to your work, and you can have more aspects of your identity and personality in things that are of your own choosing and your own passions. Cade,
Exactly.
yeah, Cage, I know last year was um, big as far as exploring kind of wellness practices, physical as well as mental, maybe spiritual as well. We did some work together and kind of talked through a lot of things that we shared in common as far as different challenges and opportunities and things like that. So maybe you can kind of talk through some of the things you tried to implement, learned, new perspectives that you gained last year in 2024.
Yeah, I think 2024 taught me a lot in terms of, as you said, in terms of how can I operate at a high level, but also make sure it's sustainable. And I think sometimes sustainability means you might not go as fast, but not going as fast means you can go for a longer duration, which is very much what Otuoze tries to do in his awesome fitness challenges. So some of the things that I realized through wanting to be operate at a more sustainable level is, hey, you can't let sleep slip.
Mm-hmm.
Sleep is an important cornerstone habit that allows you to operate at a high level at your work and from a fitness perspective, because like Otuoze as well, my whole life, fitness and being in shape and exercise has been a massive part of that. But I really lost sight of that in my early 20s, 21, 22, 23, sort of pushing hard, trying to get internships, insight days, all of these things, and then getting a job that I really let myself go in the worst way. And I became really fat, you know, being really vulnerable. I became really fat, and I really detested my self-image because my whole life I've been super dialed in on that. So sleep became very important. Exercise routines became very important last year, especially given how much pressures there were on the work front. And even like the dietary aspect became very important because, again, it's very easy when you have a quote unquote demanding job to think, hey, I'm just going to eat wherever is available, take away whatever. But again, I realized I was breaking down physically and at times emotionally as well. So I had to be like, okay, especially using your program, JT, how can I sort of create practices, how can I create a framework that allows me to perform, but allows me to be whole emotionally and physically as well, and spiritually. So, sleep, diet, exercise, those are the things I started to hone in on.
Yeah, yeah. I think kind of going back to our American culture expectations and things like that, especially around sleep. I know I've heard people say things like, "Oh, I'll sleep when I'm dead," or kind of mention like, "Oh, I only got 4 hours of sleep last night because I was working so hard," almost like a badge of honor and like bragging about it. But if you think, you're really only harming yourself here, and in the long run, like if you're going through a work week and you're only getting like 3 hours, 4 hours of sleep, I'm gonna bet that your productivity is not really as high as you think it is. Like if you come into the office on a full 8 hours of sleep, I'm sure your brain is functioning at a level where you're problem solving much quicker. Your logic and ability to make connections is better. So I think almost like being proud of not getting any sleep. I hope the tides are turning against that these days, because it does. I mean, especially with all the research coming out about just how detrimental it is to get to not have enough sleep, to be sleep deprived, and just the plaques that build up in your brains, the neural connections that are not firing. That's a big one for me. That as soon as I started really putting up some strong boundaries around my sleep, and turning off my phone, putting it on silent, keeping it in the other room, just making sure that I'm getting to bed at the same time every night, getting up at the same time every morning, getting that like those 7 to 9 hours as that sweet spot has really been a game changer for me, in the mental
Mm,
health space as well. Just not being as anxious and as frazzled, because I know that at least I was sleeping properly and let my body kind of rest and recover. Have you
mm.
found that difficult in your cage with a pretty high demanding job around time and things like that? Have you found establishing those boundaries to be a challenge, and maybe how have you addressed them?
I think at first it was difficult because, again, I've allowed myself to be brainwashed into certain motifs around hard work. That, hey, put in the overtime. And not saying that there won't be times where you need to work a bit harder, but I think it was changing the mindset shift. I think that was the most difficult aspect. And I think Otuoze can relate from his army days, where there's a particular mindset that pervades certain industries. So again, not sleeping as well, or working hard to a point where you neglect other areas is seen as a badge of honor. And the paragons of success are those who have endured some of these things. And they're prayed, like the Elons, the people who work 100 hours a week. Those are seen as high performing, high octane type individuals, right? So as I realized what was important to me, and I think my Christian faith has been something that's also allowed grounded me and allowed me to realize that there are things more important. I've slowly started to shift my mindset and said, hey, if I'm leaving this at 6, it's fine. There's work tomorrow. Work is not going away, and tomorrow's not even promised anyway. I had a traumatic event where one of my friends passed away at 25. So that made me realize that our tomorrows, our next years, our 5-year plans aren't as certain as we think they are. You can really be gone at any time, you know? So I have been changing my mindset, and that's been really helpful.
Yeah, yeah. The fragility of life is something that
Yes.
I also lost a couple of very close friends at a young age, and yeah, you think you're invincible, especially in your young age and into your 20s. Like, oh, I got this whole life ahead of me. I can just postpone whatever. I can grind myself down because later on, that's where I'll make up for it. But
Hmm.
like you said, yeah, tomorrow's never promised, but just be grateful for it, and try to do the best in the day to day, and make sure you're looking out for yourself and keeping yourself healthy. Otuoze, did you want to kind of add any comments on that for the sleep aspect?
Well, thankfully, my current career, there's never any expectation of late nights. I have a set schedule, and it doesn't change. The only thing that I've experienced before is so I have to travel fairly regularly, and I'll have to get up really early to get to the airport, and or I'll get back home from a flight really late, and then the next day I might still have to. go to work, and I start the workday pretty early. Um, but again, there's never any expectation that I have to stay an hour or two. If it's a regular workday, right? There's no expectation ever that I have to stay an hour or two past work. I'm supposed to go home at 5:30 or 6:30. I shut off my computer. I'm going home. On the weekends, I turn off my computer, turn off the work phone. Nobody's getting to me because I mean, in my role, right, I have no emergencies to put out. There are no fires that I have to put out, right? So and I'm fortunate in having a role like that, and the like I was mentioning before, in a lot of ways, I reached this position by being very intentional in my mindset because I know what I was coming from before. I know what I had in the army,
Yeah, how
where
was the
it's
like in the military, like with sleep and things like that? Like how, well, I don't know what it's like, but I can't
yeah.
imagine
Okay.
it's
Okay. Let
super
me give you an
supportive.
example. So, I was a missile systems officer, right? We would have 30-day field exercises, right? We would go out there for 30 days, and we would have so there were let's say there were four crews, right? And I was an officer in one of the crews. Um, so or three crews or something, right? Three, four crews, however many we had. I'd be the leader of one of the crews. So we would either have 8, 12, 16, or 24-hour shifts, right? But the 24s were the worst for obvious reasons because you're awake, right? You're looking at the system, you're monitoring it, you're clicking on alerts, you're doing this, you're doing that. And, to stay awake, you have to take Monster Energy, right? You have to take caffeine pills, you have to drink coffee, right? And then you're doing that. Okay, I was awake for 24 hours, then I got 24 hours off, but in that 24 hours that I'm off, my boss is still coming to me and bothering me for things because he's incompetent, so he doesn't know anything. So he's asking me, "Could you do this that I didn't take care of?" So during my off time, I'm helping other people out, right?
Yeah.
And then, right then my 24-hour rest period ends, and then I'm back to doing another 24-hour shift, right? Or maybe 2 days, and then it's another shift. So by the time we finish that 30-day period, I have no idea when I'm supposed to go to sleep, when I'm supposed to wake up, right? And then it'll be, right, we finish the 30 days in the field, then it's, oh, you get a 3-day break, and then you come back to work you start going to work at 5 a.m., right? So it was always a yo-yo. Establishing a sleep pattern was not a thing. Um, Now, I mean, unfortunately for me today, I mean, with everything that just goes on in my head and all the worries and anxiety from service, I mean, I still have difficulties with staying asleep, right? I max maybe my body would let me get 6 hours of sleep, and then once a week I'll just have a 12-hour crash. But even this is a lot more consistent than what I used to get.
Right.
And I mean, I'm appreciative of it, right? Because I think of it holistically, and I say the reason why I'm not able to get the type of sleep I want is because of things that are with me and in my head, not because my job is making my body like that. Because I've been in a situation where that was the case, right? Um, and so I go, my sleep issues, those are more mental health things that I need to keep working on, and hopefully my sleep will get better. Um, but yeah, I was very big on that coming out of just, hey, the reason why I'm staying awake, right? If I'm going to stay awake until midnight or 1, it's not because of my job. It's
Right.
because I
No.
was indisciplined.
Yeah, sure.
Binging a Netflix series.
Yeah, exactly. That's but and that's the reality of my life. So I mean, I'm pretty happy about that.
Yeah, no, yeah, I can't even imagine what that must have felt like to be that sleep deprived over those long periods of time. We're coming up on wrapping up a little bit here, but wanted to give you both the opportunity to kind of give any final last comments, anything for any listeners out there, things that you've learned, any advice you could share with the group.
I think one of the books that really, again, was part of the overhaul of my mindset was a book I read by a gentleman called Leo Tolstoy. I hope I'm quoting the title right. How Much Land Does a Man Need?
Hmm.
Really brilliant book around a protagonist that sort of pushes himself to the brink. I won't give any more spoilers because I think it's a great read. It's a short story by a Russian novelist. But yeah, I think sometimes our habits around consumption, materialistic consumption, can sometimes drive us to live lifestyles that are unsustainable. Because again, linking back to some of the topics we've spoken about today, I want to have that house in Short Hills, and I'm making New Jersey references, so apologies to anybody listening outside the state.
It's an
Or
expensive area.
yeah, or I want that X5 or I want that X7. So because I want X, Y, and Z things, I need to have a job that generates X amount of income. And oftentimes, again, in the Western world, jobs that produce a lot of income typically take a lot of time, especially knowledge work. So you can end up being a slave, to your material possessions. And I think different spiritual systems have spoken to that, right? Again, being a Christian, the Bible says people who are sort of desperate to be rich, and I'm paraphrasing here, have pierced themselves with many sorrows. So on this path to, I need money, I need this, people end up actually hurting themselves, you know, and that's the dark side of the Elon Musk, where again he's not as connected to his children. I've read things where there's certain there can be substance abuse sometimes in some of these very high performing males, people who utilize very illicit means of abusing Adderall and things like that, again, to be high performing, and these things can really take a toll on us. So just wanted to end my contribution with saying, hey, read that book and try and check yourself when it comes to what's driving you to do all of these things.
Yeah, yeah. Thank you. I'll have to check that one out. Actually, I haven't read that one yet, but sounds like a good one for some perspective. Otuoze, how about you?
Yeah. I think for my final thoughts here is just along the lines of what Cage is doing, or Cage is mentioned here. Just do an audit of your life, right?
Mm,
How much time are you spending on work versus your friends and your family, right? Your leisure activities, because a lot of times unhappiness can come from when there's a mismatch, right? If you already have all of your needs covered, right? And I mean your needs, not your wants. Um, then you have to determine for yourself, and that number is different, right? That percentage is different for each person. How much more time and effort are you willing to put into your job, right? If you have a side hustle, right, that you're trying to bring in, and I say this because these are questions that I'm thinking about for myself, right? Um, how much more time are you willing to put into these efforts that are going to bring you monetary or financial gain, right? Because there's always a trade-off. Because the more time you spend on these professional activities, right, financial activities, you're going to lose time with your family, your friends, and the things that are leisure activities. So
mm,
that's what really comes down to. You got to have data for it, right? You know, at different stages of life, right? You have to say, okay, I need to be more willing to put into my career, or I want to I want to start a business and I want it to take off. So I'm gonna put in more effort into this, right, and lose the other side, right, the fun side of life. But then at some point, the balance can't be towards the career all the time. At some point, it needs to be brought back. And I think that's the key to happiness, right? And that's why it's a work life balance.
Hmm.
It's active. It's active from your part. You don't just set something, right, and say, yeah, I'm only gonna work 40 hours a week forever, right? In my career forever, and then 60 hours is for my family. Things might have to change. You
Mm,
have to you have to you have to look at it.
Yeah, kind of like actively manage, make sure it's staying in balance. Yeah, like
Exactly.
that.
Just like you manage, I don't know, business, financial investments. You got to manage your time like that.
Yeah, like that. The conduct an audit on your own life. Just get kind of clear about where you are and where you want to be. It's the first step in accomplishing a goal is knowing what that goal is. So good to get clear about it. Well, yeah, thank you both very much for coming on the show and taking your time, and hopefully
USA,
have you back on.
USA, USA. Thank you,
I appreciate
JT.
it, guys. Okay, so I'll stop and we can